Hi all, I wanted to do a little walkthrough with all of you on the Forms notebook and how you're going to be using it during the field-based semester. The notebook that you use for your Forms notebook will likely be the largest binder that you purchased for the field-based semester. So I believe that's a 3-inch binder. And here you will see you are going to, on the very front of your Forms notebook, you're going to keep the point sheet for the cooperating teacher weekly reaction, as well as your weekly data reflection. You're also going to keep your notebook where you keep all of your collaboration logs, CT weekly reactions, etc. We'll go through each of those in just a moment. When you open up your notebook, the first thing that you should see is going to be the point sheet where your supervisors are going to take them out of the page protector. So make sure you have them in a page protector. And they're going to be giving you points at visits 2 through visit 7 for your cooperating teacher, that weekly reaction, as well as your weekly data reflection that we're going to talk about in just a minute. Additionally, you'll have another form in here where you will see that you have points for visits 2 through visit 7, and this is where all of your ongoing data collection, ongoing planning, all of those points will be assigned from your supervisor at each of your visits. All right, let's talk about where your plans are going to be housed. So in your Forms notebook, you're going to insert 3 dividers, maybe 4, depending on the content areas that you're going to be teaching. I just have content area 1, 2, 3, and 4 in my binder, but this is just an example. So by all means, go ahead and label them with the actual content area that you will be teaching. So as soon as you open the first tab for your content area 1, this is where you're going to start putting your instructional plans. So at first, you're just going to have your instructional plans that you have yet to teach. So there will likely be 2 or 3 plans in here because you'll always have 2 plans in advance, and you want the most current plan on top. Once you have taught your plans, then right after that, you will include your learners' performance data. So you'll include your qualitative, quantitative data, and your reflection that will inform you if you need to make any adjustments to those plans that you've already written for the future. You also want to make sure that you have your CT initial and date in one of the corners of your instructional plan. So this is something that your supervisors are going to be looking at beginning at visit 2 when they're looking at your Forms notebook for points, is if your CT has been signing and dating those plans to evidence that you really are planned 2 days in advance. An additional piece that goes in with your ongoing planning is a weekly reflection on your student learning. So really the purpose of this is we know that you're reflecting each day on your learner performance and how they're doing and adjusting your plans, but we really want for you to start thinking overall, long term, how are your students doing? So we ask that you take a look at a week's worth of data to help you kind of start to plan that next week of instruction. This is an example that's in your manual, and you can definitely change this table that's up here however you need to fit your needs. So this example just is showing some objectives where they're using math and how they're sequenced to kind of build on the skill. And you can see the quantitative data there listed of how those learners are performing over the course of 5 days of instruction. And then there are some guiding questions there for you to answer about your learners' progress, any patterns you're seeing, what can you do, what kinds of supports, scaffolds, and you want to make sure that you're making a connection to research and theory. So when you have completed your first week of instruction, you are going to then do your weekly data reflection. Now on here, I just put a number 1. This might be just a good way for you to kind of tag for your supervisor when they come, they're looking at your forms notebook, because they're going to be taking points with your weekly data reflection. So you just want to be able to show them in some way, here's where it is, so that they can easily find it. So you might just add some kind of a tab or tag onto that so that they can see week 1, week 2, week 3, etc. And then they can give you some feedback and score your points on your visit record form. Of course, as you're picking up additional content areas, you'll have your content area 2 tab, content area 3, where all of your instructional plans will go. So as you can see, this notebook is going to end up being very thick, since some of those plans are multiple pages. So you can talk to your supervisor maybe around midterm or at different points in the semester, where they might say that you can pull out some of your older instructional plans and keep them in a separate place so that this binder doesn't become a literal ton that you're carrying around every day. But remember, you are going to keep this available for your cooperating teacher, because this is where they're going to be looking at those instructional plans. They are going to be initialing and dating in the corner of your plan to evidence that you are 2 plans in advance. So your supervisor is going to be looking for that when they come for a visit, because right on here it asks, are you planned in advance? Do you have evidence of that? And your forms notebook is going to be your primary artifact for that. Within your forms notebook, you'll have an additional spiral bound notebook where you are going to keep your CT weekly reaction. So if you have a pocket folder within your notebook, that's great. You could go ahead and just make 16 copies if you'd like, or you and your cooperating teacher can fill this out electronically if you would like. Just make sure that you print it and get it in your folder for your supervisor to see prior to any of your visits. So we ask that you fill out the teacher candidate section first, and then you give it to your cooperating teacher so that they can discuss the strengths that they've observed, as well as any areas that they would like for you to target for growth. If there are areas that they put in their section that perhaps you didn't reflect on initially, feel free then on the back of your form to just discuss how are you going to consider the areas that they discussed on your CT weekly reaction. I would encourage you to find a specific day of the week that works for your cooperating teacher that you're going to submit this form to them. Some teachers prefer that you give it to them on Friday and they have the weekend to be able to fill it out. Others prefer to have it on Mondays. Just make sure that by the time your supervisor comes to visit, that you have each week's updated and in your binder ready to go. In addition to your cooperating teacher weekly reaction, you're going to divide your notebook into 3 different sections. So if you have a divided notebook, fantastic. The first area that you're going to have is evidence of collaboration. And here on a notebook page, each week, you are going to detail all of the different people that you've collaborated with. So if you met with your speech and language person one day, you would put the date, a brief description of what was discussed. Perhaps the social worker came in, a gen ed teacher, anyone that you collaborated with, paraprofessional, anyone at all. You're just going to put the date, who you collaborated with, and a brief synopsis of what you discussed, and then have your cooperating teacher just initial that at the end of the week. The next section that you're going to include is questions for supervisors. So this is really a way for you to evidence your readiness for learning, to evidence that you have a reverence for learning, so that when your supervisor comes for a visit, you're prepared with questions. You have a great resource when your supervisor is there to visit with you to ask them questions about your projects that are coming up, about your instructional plans. You want to use that time and be prepared with questions as opposed to waiting until after they leave and then all of these questions come flooding to you that you wish you would have asked. So use this. This is something that they can glance at while you're teaching and be prepared to answer. There's also another section, questions for cooperating teacher. So the same here as well. You want to write down those questions. Maybe you're at home in the evening and you think of something that you want to ask your CT the next day, or your CT's teaching a lesson and you just had something that popped in your head and you don't want to forget. You want to make sure that you write down these questions for your cooperating teacher and then find a meaningful time that the two of you can sit down so that you're not bombarding them with 1,000 questions on the fly, but rather finding some time to sit down together and thoughtfully discuss the plans that you have, the questions that you have, etc., in a thoughtful way. So to recap, here are the things that should be included in your forms notebook. You're going to have a spiral bound notebook where you keep your CT weekly reactions as well as all of your evidence of collaboration. So evidence of all of the professionals that you're collaborating with on a daily or weekly basis at your site, questions that you have for your supervisor visits, and then questions that you have for your cooperating teacher. Additionally, your point sheets are going to be included in here. Those are going to be at the very front of your forms notebook for easy access for each time your supervisor comes to visit. Your ongoing planning point sheet is going to be the second there. Again, just for easy access for your supervisor to see at each visit. And then where you keep your instructional plans as well as your weekly reflections. If you have questions, we always encourage you, come to Rectangular Table, talk with your collaborative partner, ask your supervisor, ask one of your coordinators at module. We're always happy to help.